So good afternoon, everyone. I'm very happy to be here, and I want to thank the Smashing team and Vitaly for inviting me into this conference and to talk about the future. Well, my future and the future of designers. So there is something very important to say in terms of the future. We cannot predict it. It's almost impossible. But if we change the perspective, we can actually design the future. We just need some tools that, as designers, we already have on our hands. We just need to know how to use them. So the first part is to have a very strong purpose whenever we design something. And then we need the right mindset. And finally, a solid process. My name is Chiara Aliotta. I am a designer, Italian. I live on a small island in Greece. And if you were asking me back in 2020, I would never imagine that my life and the life of many other people would be divided in before and after the pandemic. So before the pandemic, I was lucky enough to land on a very long contract with 2 years contract with a startup company that was specialized in decentralized finance. If you don't know what it is, it's also called DeFi, and it's a digital banking happening on the blockchain. So, and competing with traditional banking. And together we created many beautiful projects, some of them very futuristic too. During that period, I worked very hard. We did many beautiful things. And when the pandemic came to an end, the world was very different. And in July 2022, I was laid off. That was a big change for me. As a freelancer and as a designer, I felt deflated. At times, I was very angry. But I learned a lot of things during those 2 years. I learned that the world is changing and we need to keep up. I've always used storytelling, and if you follow me somewhere on LinkedIn or Instagram or read some articles around Smashing magazine, you have seen me talking a lot about how I create interfaces and user experiences by following the 3-act structures of Aristotle. Storytelling is very simple, but at the same time can become very complicated and can solve also complicated user journeys. It's made of a combination of cause and effects. So usually you have 3 acts, Act 1, Act 2, and 3, and then you try to combine them. Many designers have used storytelling, Aristotle's structure, to design experiences and branding, like I do. The one I like the most is the one from Donos Miller, Story Brand Framework. He made the connection between the 3 acts even more obvious, because he says, look, the story is very simple. We have a user who has a problem, and then we need to guide him into finding a plan to solve that problem, and then execute it, take this plan into action, so that he can achieve his goal, so eventually succeed. And I like this way of working, but it wasn't enough. When I had to think about innovative ideas, the structure was coming short, and I had to change the way I was working. This is how I start thinking of a new framework based on the same way that divided still in 3 acts, but with a very different way we are working with questions and perspective. So the 3-act structure you see here is something that you won't find anywhere else, because it's something that I came with by working with this organization during the last 2 years. And it starts with a very specific point. It starts from the end. It doesn't start from the beginning. It starts from the purpose. The purpose is what Simon Sinek calls the why. And it's in the organization and not just in the product, especially when you don't know what product you're going to design. And the purpose has three qualities. The first one is it's invariable. That means it doesn't change despite the context. It must be motivational. It needs to call people into action. And finally, it needs to be enhancing. That means it doesn't look at profit, but it looks at how to bring prosperity in a community, to the individual, and also on a large scale to the planet. For the organization I was working with, I came with three important questions so that I could write what I call the purpose statement. The first question is, why do we exist beyond the profit? And because we were working with investing in cryptocurrencies and money, then of course wealth is one of the things we wanted to improve. How can people become more wealthy? But at the same time, what it looks like a very egoistic, because money always brings some kind of shame in some people, but it does have to be that way. So we wanted to change that. We wanted to make an impact by providing freedom and control over legacies. That was a very important part. And we wanted to have a larger impact to the communities, because when you have money and you can decide how to use them, then you can bring prosperity in the community. Of course, you need some kind of education, but we come to that later. To achieve this purpose, most of the time you don't use just one project. In startups, we play with many and different ones. So we designed different applications that were all around the world of decentralized finance. I also designed beautiful NFTs that could be used as an entry pass for access these applications, and also some digital assets pods that could be used by everyday trainers. But one of the best, or probably one of my favorite projects, was After. After App is the application that I like the most, because it was the one that was really looking at the future. So let me tell you what After App was doing. It's a service related to it's a service for the creation of codicil and the real estate documents that are released in the blockchain. So, in very plain words, it means that you can write your will and testament on the blockchain. So you can protect your digital assets, and not just that. And for this application, I designed many beautiful things. I think they were very beautiful because I designed it. But not only that, investors really liked the way we presented these ideas. And I'm going to use this application to show you the path that I took in order to design something that was innovative and that could exist over time. And I want to share this way of working, this mental process with all of you by using After App as an example, so that it doesn't stay as a theory, but actually you can see how I applied it and how you can apply it too. So let's get started with the first act. First of all, we need to place the statement somewhere. And as I told you, it goes at the really end. The future narrative framework has something very important and different from other frameworks because it doesn't start from the problem, but it starts from the purpose. And so that one is going to guide us all over the design steps. And the first step is the explore. This is the step that's happening in the present, as we are now. And I use two specific tools. One is the research, and the other one is the sense-making. The mindset, you remember presenting these elements at the beginning, is the one related to empathy. This means not only be empathic with our users, but also be capable to capture the signal that are coming from the future. How are we going to do that? Of course, let me explain you. First of all, the explore side is done by looking through three lenses: the people, the technology, and the planet. The people usually look at what they think, feel, and say. You can use an empathic map if you want. And then for the technology, we actually try to understand about accessibility. Are they accessible widely to our target group? And compatible. Is it compatible with what is existing right now? Can we explore it even more? And finally, in terms of planet, we look at sustainability and responsibility. For responsibility, we are looking, the idea that we are creating, that's the question we ask, is what are the consequences we are bringing into this world? And then sustainability. Is this idea going to work over time? Is going to deplete our resources? And how? So by changing your question, you start finding some answers. So my research in 2020 brought up a few interesting but known data back. First of all, the people. There was a high fear of mortality. They were concerned for the loved ones. Most of them were far away. There was a lot of financial uncertainty, which brought also a lot of anxiety. And we were, most of us, isolated and very vulnerable, especially when we had to fight between news that were real or fake. In terms of technology, the technology became our savior somehow, because it was the only way we could be connected, felt connected. And, but for what mattered to us, it was important to see that the more people were adopting blockchain and finding the cryptocurrency, the new financial avenue. And at the same time, we saw the surge of artificial intelligence. ChatGPT, as we know today, was released in 2020. And of course, all these new technologies that were surging and happening so fast were bringing a lot of concern in terms, are they ethical? Are they good for the population, for the society? And in terms of planet, of course, we were thinking, okay, we live in a pandemic, are they gonna happen again? How can we avoid for happening again? And then, of course, we wanted to see all these technology-driven emissions. What are they doing to this world? And at the same time also, there was some nice stuff happening because we were enjoying a cleaner environment because most of us were not moving, we were not going anywhere. So the environment somehow experienced like, oh, what a better place. You know, maybe, what a better place without humans. But we want to be here. We are part of this ecosystem, so we need to think how this could happen. Of course, all these data, I had many more, and I'm not presenting this all to you, but we need to organize them. We need to make some kind of mental map that could give us the idea what is going on around us. And again, I come back to storytelling, because storytelling is all about cause and effects. And inspired by the will of the future, with some adaptation, I created this map. This is a very simple map. It was much bigger and larger than what you see right here. But I just want to give you an idea of how it works. So usually I take all the data, I divide it by the three lenses I was telling you about, the technology, the people, the planet. And then I place in the middle the problem, which our purpose is exactly answering. And then I start to create all around all the consequences that this problem is bringing up. It doesn't have to be other problems. Sometimes those are opportunities that we want to, white spaces that we can explore. So I usually underline the things that I think could be explored even further because I see some kind of opportunities. And if you work with startups, you know the risk is equal to opportunities most of the time. So I usually try to find what I want to carry with me and then move on the last step, which is the design decisions. So this map doesn't work alone. We need to come up with some actionable points for all the three lenses, as I call them. So for the people, of course, for the technology, and for the planet. So for the people, we individuate our target group into a very young, wealthy generation that is operating in what is called the VUCA environment. It's called volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous. How difficult can be, this environment, right? Very changing, constantly changing. But at the same time, they are digital natives, and they have trust in technology, and they believe that the well-being could be improved with better technology. And talking about technology, we wanted something that is compatible and somehow could work for us. And then we were looking at smart contracts as a solution for Wheels, to create Wheel for After app. The smart contract, if you don't know what they are digital agreements that are actually happening automatically on the blockchain. So those two technologies were actually compatible and already existing, but we need to look a little bit more into security. And of course, if we move into digital, we are reducing paper waste. We are reducing the lower carbon footprint because we don't need to send a testament from on the other side of the world. And we wanted to check more into the safety to avoid fraud online. And what about the time we were saving to lawyers and legal people that didn't have to assist to family dispute anymore? So the explore phase is a very important phase, that give us a lot of data that we can work with, and then start to think how and imagine how potential future may happen. And this is the second act of the framework that I was explaining to you. It has two specific tools, the scenario and the connection, so that you can exercise your imagination. Sometimes we are a little bit stuck, and I get that, especially how can we think about the future. And but what we are doing is we are designing our own future. So let's use some right tools, and let's use a lot of imagination to do so. So the first tool I'm going to present you is called the cone of plausibility. I don't know if you have heard about it. It's also, some people know it as the cone of possibility, but it's exactly the same. Just this one has been created by Charles Taylor in 1988 for a very different reason. For exploring geopolitical scenarios, for military readiness. Doesn't mean they wanted to see how countries will get along in a possible future, and trying to understand if there were going to be conflict in the most near future. So we can use exactly the same tool to design scenarios, so to create stories for our own product. So let me tell you a little bit how it works. The first part is about creating, the first cone is about the possible futures. So here we include all the possible scenarios that may happen. Our research gave us back. So things that may happen very soon and so on. So we don't exclude anything, but it needs to be possible. Then we filter a little bit even more, and we go into what is plausible future. These are scenarios and stories that we create that may happen or not. And then we go into what is the probable future. Then these are scenarios that are actually they may materialize very soon because we have already seen through our research they are going to happen. So I know this sounds a little bit abstract, so let me tell you how we did it for After App. So for possibilities, we already saw and we could already understand that After App will be spread globally faster because our target group was already working and operating on that environment with blockchain and smart contracts, so we didn't need to inform them about the technology we were using. At the same time, we could foresee that a lot of other organizations were already investing in security and innovation in the blockchain. And in terms of planet, of course, we wanted to have more, we wanted to see more education around how to use money and how to make better decisions with your wealth. So those are scenarios that are possible. But then what if we want to go completely Black Mirror style plotting, right? And you want to think about a scenario that may happen, that it's almost absurd, but why not? So these are things we called wild cards, and they create unexpected futures or disruptive events. So in the case of After App, because we wanted to create a will on the blockchain, we wanted to think about a celestial inheritance. That's what I thought. Let's think about a billionaire that is going somewhere in the space and is going on a mission to find new planets. So every person that is in After maybe can found this mission and inheritance a part of the universe. Nice. You can have it start with your name. Or what about technology? We see an increasing use of virtual and augmented reality. If combined with advancement in artificial intelligence and biometrics, we could recreate the personality, the expression, and the voice of the lead donors that is talking to us. So we could create even more emotional connection with our user, with the beneficiary of the will. And the last one about planet. As we go into space, who's going to say we're going to live on this world in 10 years by now? Maybe we're going to open a planet in we're going to open a station on planet Mars or in Venus, I don't know, or maybe in another galaxy. So what about the wealth we're going to produce on these planets? How are we going to manage them? So I know that looks very far away, but think about the celestial inheritance. Already in 2020, I predicted that Elon Musk was going to the space. So it's a very powerful tool, very simple to be used. But the most important part of this cone of plausibility is what is called the preferred future. And this is the future, the scenario that we use to actually focus on what we are going to call the desirable future, the future we want to create in order that our application, our idea, can actually exist. So for the preferred future, I imagine something a little bit different for After App. I imagine a community of people that were sharing and advices related to digital assets and real estate, so making better decisions on how they're going to spend their own money. On terms of technology, I imagine After App to be the standard of security on the blockchain, that we're going to set the first step in how blockchain could be more secure and safe for all the users. And for the planet, I was imagining that through the application, we can educate people on using part of their wealth in making a social impact. So that's the kind of future I wanted After App to live in. That's the kind of future I wanted this application and my idea to be, to exist. And so I worked very hard. Usually design worked really hard to make this happen, mostly on the first step we're going to see later. But before we go there is another tool I want you to explore, which is called the forced connection. I'm sure most of you have used it. Probably you didn't know that this is the name. So it's about combining two specific attributes that are coming from different elements of your product or service. So you put in the middle the problem you want to solve, and you list those attributes. So let me tell you what I did for After App. So on one side, I had all the attributes related to the application we were creating. And I used something I want to say, that I used this specific tool, exercise, to think about the branding, the design of the branding. So that's a very specific name, because then by choosing this tool, I actually was able to design all the look and feel of the application. So what I'm saying, on the other side, we have also some attributes that are not related, strictly related to the application itself. And to come up with these new attributes, I actually start thinking about funeral ceremonies in ancient Greece. I live in Greece, on a Greek island, so I'm very exposed to mythology. And at the same time, I was thinking of the myth of Pluto. Do you know about this myth? Pluto is the divinity of afterlife, and gods have give him a key to distribute wealth to the humanity. So I was like, oh my God, we do have a key. We have a public and private key. We need to have access. And we're talking, the ancient Greek mythology is talking about journey, and we're talking about departure. So immutability, eternal. And I was like, oh my God, I have my correlation. I know what I want to design. I know how this brand mark is going to look like. And this is what I came up with. This was the logo of After App. It has a coin on the top because we're talking about wealth, we're talking about money. And at the same time, the coin obol, that's how it's called, is the same coin that is used in ancient funeral ceremonies, and it's placed on the mouth of the deceased person to ensure passage in the afterlife. And of course, it's also a representation of wealth. On top of the coin, there is the letter A that is stylized, and it's forming a key, the key of Pluto, but also the key that allows you to access to the blockchain, the public and private key, but also a sense of secrecy, immutability, and all the brand mark was included in a hexagon, so to give it more a sense of privacy. The same coin on top then was used to identify the token utility, so the little token that we used as a voucher to access the application. And the token was called indeed obol, so the same name of the coin used for the funeral ceremonies in ancient Greece. So this what you see here is a tokenomics, which is an instrument, a way to organize the economic insight for the token and for the application itself. Going a little bit further, we have a lot of ideas and imagination, but we need to come into how we're gonna share it with other people. And still, storytelling is the best way to share ideas. We are gonna use 2 specific other tools in this step. One is the implementation, and the other one is the impact. And our mindset should be the one of collaboration, because we want to have as many people as possible to buy into not just our idea, but that future that we are imagining is going to happen, and we need to be ready for that. So when we arrive from a lot of imagination, we come with a lot of assumptions. And when we need to design prototypes, and in startups especially, time and money comes together. And time is always very little. This is where I start to challenge all our assumptions and prioritize what is very important for the creation of an application. So I start to analyze the features. What are the features that are really important for my MVP? What are the ones I want to explore a little bit more because they are important, but we don't know how they work? Or what I'm going to leave outside this application? And so what we don't need right now, what we can left out is just the vanity for now. We just leave it out. We don't spend time on it. So for After App, I listed a series of features that we wanted to include and categorize them. And based on that, I start to design the prototypes and the MVP. So we will start testing and doing some iteration on the prototypes based on these assumption matrix that you see here. Of course, it was more complex again, but just to give you an idea of how we were working. And the prototypes were something like this. They look very much into the branding that you saw before. The choice of color, of course, was violet, the color of that, but also the color of wealth. And a lot of nice illustrations were created too. We come to that after. And of course, when you have beautiful prototypes, you need to show it to the people. You need to tell them a story. And most of all, you want to ensure that you have an impact with your story, right? That's the most important part of designing a new future. And for impact, usually we go through 3 important factors. The first one is about building trust. Claudio yesterday was talking about it, and how it's important to build trust around not just your idea, but your organization. That's more important because your idea may die tomorrow, but your organization may exist in the future, so you want people to trust you more than, and then trust that anything you're doing is good for the planet, the people, the individual, the communities. And then we wanted a more holistic approach. We didn't want just to talk to investors. Of course, we wanted to be founded, but we had to talk also to the legal people. They knew better than us about regulations. Some states, in the States, some of the countries have a very specific laws in terms of will and how legacies are distributed. So we needed to talk to these people because actually those people were probably the first to hear about After App. And then about collective engagement, intelligence. The collective intelligence is about feeling that the mission of the organization, the purpose, of the organization is also their mission and vision. So we are on the same page. So what we are talking about, it resonates with them in a way that they feel it to their bones. So for After App, I designed very different tools to create this kind of impact, to share the ideas we came with. Some were the presentation, the pitch that we share with our investors. We talk about features, of course. We talk about market, what we found in the market. We talk about how we were going to place After on the marketplace. It was almost inexistent at that time. And also about business plan, of course. They want to hear about money. But what about the people who don't know and doesn't need to know all of this? We created a blog, a very simple blog called Afterthoughts, and we start thinking how we can explain in simple words our design decision, why that feature was developed in that way or in another way. Another important part was probably the part I love the most because I like illustrating. And it was the creation of this NFT collection called Elysium. Elysium is another way to call the afterlife. And these were used as a pass to unlock specific rewards and perks inside the application. So this is what I thought, and this is the framework I've been using from now and on to design the future. And it seems almost impossible sometimes to be used in some organization because you need to change the perspective. You need to ask the right questions. So I give you a tip. You can use this tool only if your organization, the people you work with, the environment you are in, can see the design as a strategy, as a connection between the past and the future. What I mean for that? I mean that if they think about design thinking, this has to shift into future thinking. If they talk about predicting the future, we need to think in creating the future. If they just talk about mission and vision, we need to talk about desirable futures and purpose. And when they talk about money, this has to change, has to become optionality. So how many opportunities we are open up in the future. Because it's not just about user center, but it's about planet center. And I know we cannot create the future, we cannot predict the future, but if we create it, I'm sure we can own it. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Chiara.
Thank
beautiful, beautiful slide. Please join me for the conversation,
Yeah.
for short conversation. We had a lot of questions about slides and how you put them together and everything. So I'm going to jump into some of the questions that we had in here. Decio is wondering, so we've been mentioning freelancers and 3 different acts. Do you think it's possible to see further than 3 years with everything that's going on in the world?
Absolutely.
After all, we could not predict what was happening in the last few years.
Because it's not about predicting, it's about designing. You design that future, so you create it for you. Then it doesn't matter what is happening around you. Well, it matters, but you work with opportunities. So it means that you open up your idea to change and create new opportunities. That's how it works. We don't try to predict the future. That's not the meaning of this framework. It's about design it. So the framework is helping you to put together the pieces of all the people that's going to help you, and the tools and elements going to help you to create that future.
Okay.
So,
There was also a question about the presentation on its own. Which software you used? Was it Prezi? Was it Keynote?
It's a Keynote.
So that must have included a lot of illustrations and a lot of animations.
Yes, it's a lot of coordination as well. Yeah.
So just how much time did it take for you to put the presentation together?
I want to know. It's a little bit a lot. But I think what it took a long time was to put together all the idea and the framework and be able to explain it to you, because there is much more behind that. And I think you can feel it. I mean, here I had to condense everything in 35 minutes of talk.
Yeah.
So all these tools have a lot of ideas behind it that the presentation wouldn't be able to cover.
Right.
And that's probably the time I took was more in synthesize everything so that it could make still sense, and I can give you some ideas and add value to this conference. But then of course the animation made the rest, but it took time. Yeah, definitely a lot of time.
Right. So we've been, throughout the conference, we've been speaking, we're a little bit behind schedule here, but we're speaking about different things. So we had a conversation about enterprise UX, right? We had a kind of product design, and now we're coming from the startup angle here. So one question that Sandro has asked, did you find it exciting or more exciting working for a startup company? Is there more freedom and exploration and freeing as a designer, or is it more stressful because of uncertainty of the future of the brand and just the overall situation in the world and NFTs and Web3 and all?
You have both. You really have both. You have the excitement because you're going to try and test new technologies. So that's a very nice thing. You have the freedom to try new things, also in design. At the same time, you have the uncertainty of living in a company that may not exist anymore. And that was my case. So I don't regret it, and I learned so much. And I think it's a nice experience. I mean, it's a very nice experience. You get both of the sides. I don't think there is a middle place for this. You come to compromises eventually. I probably knew it at some point. No, actually, I didn't know. But I've been working with a lot of startups, and I saw that life is sometimes a little bit shorter than it is. And this framework came from somehow reviewing what we have done and how we could make it a little bit better. So I believe that, there could be startups that could last. I mean, we have a lot of examples. So
sure.
It just happened to me that this one didn't work.
I'm wondering, just how many people who are here, maybe, who are working in startups? A few people? There are a few.
People.
Yeah, there's because it's very interesting just to see the dynamic that is often very different when it comes to designers working in a startup. And sometimes it's very difficult. Anybody in the position where you don't know, is it still a startup or is it not? It's difficult to say sometimes. Right? So I'm just wondering at this point, in terms of the process, for example, maybe I missed it because I just went outside for a moment. How many designers were on board, or were you actually the only?
I was the only one. The jack of all trades. I was doing everything. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
We had 2 engineers, and the CEO was also an engineer. So we developers, but I was the only designer, and that's sometimes the problem because. I mean, if there were more designers, we could also solve issues differently sometimes.
Yeah, of course.
So you can bump into other issues so that I want to discuss with another designer. So I was a design lead in the company, but I was the only one. So I just took the title. I'm a leader. Design lead, of course, I am.
Yeah. There is a fantastic book by, I think, Leah Booley on navigating the team of one. It is something like that. So if you happen to be the only designer on the team, that's an absolutely incredible book for any kind of, with a lot of practical insights and techniques on how to just navigate complex environments, not so complex environments. That's just fantastic. There was also a question that came up about how do you prototype? So I think, let me find it here. I think it was this one. Yes, what tool do you use for prototyping, if at all?
Yeah, we heard that all the talks. Figma is my software of choice. So yeah, that's the way I do my prototypes. Then the beta version, of course, was built in the blockchain, and so that's how also we tested. But yeah, my prototypes were all designed on Figma.
Okay. There's also a very interesting sentiment, of course, that came through in the comments about blockchain being viewed negatively in here, but also everywhere around the world, I would say.
Yes.
Also, I think I remember us having the conversation about Web3 and NFTs 2-3 years ago, and it seems like it's a hype and everything. And I think that right now, it's like,
down.
oh, if you're talking to at a party about Web3, then you have a very high chance to not meet any friends at that party, maybe. I mean, sorry, I don't want to. I mean, if you are very much in Web, whatever that means in Web3 or NFT, that's different, right? But I would say one question that came up, kind of, this is why I'm mentioning it as well, is that in that space where you basically have maybe this reluctance about the topic altogether, the blockchain. How do you reach an agreement with your client? Future prediction and design seem to be very interesting, but it seems like kind of the sentiment is, but it seems like blockchain is probably something that is not necessarily going to be the center of the universe in which we're operating.
So I don't know if I understood the question, but because you were talking about environment issues.
So there are a couple of things here, I guess.
Yeah.
So one of them is about environment, but the other one is just in general, how do you reach an agreement with your client?
In terms of what?
If you have, let's say, a particular view on things, because again, looking at blockchain has, of course...
Yeah, absolutely. Well, the purpose that we wrote, it was about prosperity. So prosperity means a lot of things, and one of the things we wanted to bring in is also not using all the resources that are available in the planet, just because we wanted to make an application that could allow people to distribute their wealth, because there wouldn't be a planet for us anymore. So, of course, that's one thing that was that raised a lot of questions. But we were seeing, and still we see, that there are a lot of companies that are trying to do their best to bring innovation in the blockchain, and not just and trying to lower the emissions. So, as they're doing right now, also with artificial intelligence, which is also another. It's bringing other questions in terms of planet and sustainability. So at that time, and also now, I mean, it's happening. A lot of people are investing and researching more how they could lower the impact into the planet. So I believe, and I'm sure that if we were going further, we would go to that path. That was our idea all over the project. So we were going to explore how we could not deplete all our resources. Of course, I guess that if we were not embracing this possibility, I wouldn't like it, and probably would have felt like a little bit not well about my work, of have contributed to this. So probably would have stepped back, but so has many other people that work in AI have stepped back because they felt like it was not going to the right direction. Sometimes you think that the company interests are the right one. It's not always the case. Sometimes money take over. And then, yeah, if that was the case, I would probably quit the job. So they wouldn't have the time to lay me off. I would probably left.
Yeah.
I know it's bold to say. It didn't happen, but feeling as I am, trying to be always very coherent with the person I am and feel proud of my work. So, yeah, I think that would be my decision.
Right. And the final question, I know that you deeply care about storytelling.
Yes.
So every time we have conversations, it's like storytelling comes up and you have this way of doing it. And you actually have to see the work that Chiara is producing. Because like whenever you actually think about an illustration, there is this big theme and there are all these little connections, like you've seen in some of the slides as well. This little dot represents this. And this little sign or circle represents this. And I always feel almost, I don't know, like almost magical, because this is like this incredible synthesis of all these different ideas that come into place, where it feels like they're so distant. This idea seems to be so distant at first. And then when they come together, you get like the key, or you get these other symbols or whatnot. And maybe just within a minute or so that we have left, could you maybe just give some sort of a guidance about how would you actually embed storytelling, like the ones that you maybe also did for the video course, into the design work? How do you start just by pulling all these ideas, and then how do you bring them together?
Force connection is the tool you saw. That's the easiest the easiest tool that I use. And that's how I come up with ideas. Even with the blog and website we designed for your course, Vitaly, it was a connection of words that are being used by Vitaly. So I just make connection and I create stories. So probably very similar what writers will do. And by making this connection, then I justify all the elements that are adding into my design. So nothing's left to, there is nothing random in what I do, never. There are always little symbols behind it. Even in the Smashing Book 6, that was also another work we did together. That's also, just the cover itself is telling you a story. So, yeah, I think the easy way to start is by force connection, and then I use the 3-act structure to organize all my idea in a journey. So I try to understand if I'm solving the problem, I'm trying to understand if the elements are placed in the right place, and if I'm giving right direction to the user on how to use it, and then if I'm able to help the user to achieve their goals. So that's how usually I start. It's a lot of imagination, then I go through the funnel of the 3-act structure.
Yeah, beautiful.
Simple as it is, but complicated
beautiful.
as well.
If you have some questions to care of Fabrizio as well, you can also, of course, go to the membership stand, and they'll be available to all the questions that you might have. But so far, thank you so much for being with us and sharing your insights and a beautiful presentation, Chiara.
Thank you, everyone. I just want...
right.
Yeah, I don't know, but when you go out, you're going to find this little smart envelope. I'm into origami. And here inside, in case of emergency, and you need ideas how to use the framework, you have it inside here. Just open it, you pull it out, and and you use it, okay? Just a little gift from me to you, so that you can start designing your own future. So that's
Thank you so much, Chiara. Beautiful. Thank you so much.
Thank you.